Okay, so welcome back guys. Thank you so much for the patience. So my name is Thomas and I'm one of the education directors at Palmer & Company International. So today guys we are here for sort of an hour to 1.5 hour long live based on inspiration, collections and creative haircuts. So with these guys, before we start off, I would like to say thank you for Lemon Poppy Seed for inviting us to do this live. We know that sitting in a lockdown can be quite hard. We actually are in the same situation. So we do feel for you guys and we hope this is going to help to inspire you and keep you stronger until you need to. So with these guys, what we're going to do first is to take you through a presentation on our latest or new collection. So what was really the aim with the social, which is how the collection called, is to create a storyboard, a storyline, something very sort of real life, rather than doing a very sort of studio shoot. So with this anthology of photograph tells you a story that starts at the end of the 80s and the early 90s. So the social follows a young man meeting his friends at the social club, which is quite important. So we are talking about the social club, but this is something which will be explained a little bit later. So he watches a group of girls getting ready for their night out and wishes he could meet girls like these. So first of all guys, just to give you a taste of the new collection, just to show you what's really it's all about, we're going to play our promo video, which was actually made on the day, and again something very natural. So we didn't tell the girls what to do, they've been basically doing their things and we videoed. So thank you guys, I hope you will enjoy, and I will be back with you in a moment. Okay, so welcome back guys. I hope you enjoy the video and I hope it gives you a little bit of a taste of what this is really all about. Imagine we are back in the 80s and the concept is based on basically two different sort of subcultures. The main sort of inspiration for the dresses, but then also the makeup, is actually this sort of picture. So as you saw on the dresses guys, we did work with tartan, which is basically this sort of square pattern. And then also we did work with quite bright colors and very sort of, well, I would say strong makeup, but still kind of kept on the natural side. So the actual inspiration with the dresses comes from a lady called Vivienne Westwood. So Vivienne Westwood was actually a very famous fashion designer back in the 70s, and she was very well known for basically adopting the punk lifestyle, and then also you know, the actual sort of identity, the feeling of freedom into dressing, clothing. So she was with this basically one of the most influential person, not just the 70s, but in general of fashion history. So when it comes to the actual sort of styles, we've mixed together two different sort of, you know, fashion subcultures. One is the punk and the other one is a bit less known. It's called 90s Club Land. So basically, you know what punk is all about. Punk is all about freedom, quite sort of interesting dressing, a lot of chains and stuff. But when it comes to the Clubland, well, the Clubland was a clubbing subculture, being very well known of actually crazy, about the crazy dresses. So these guys, you know, did go out, had a party, and they dressed up almost like they would actually, you know, perform in a theater. So, for example, you can see this picture, it's almost, you know, like the gentleman stepped out from an actual movie. And also you will see in a moment the actual makeup he's wearing, which is very strange to start with, that, you know, a man actually has a makeup on. So it's good to know that this was basically started somewhere actually in the 70s, 80s. So when it comes to our makeup, it was quite heavily inspired by the previous picture. So as you can see, what we have is a very sort of light base, but still sort of kept on the natural side. And around the eyes, and also with the lips, we did work with very sort of strong, bright colors, same as the dresses. So the lady who done these makeups for us called Claire, she was an amazing makeup artist. And this was our actual first time with her, but she really sort of get the idea of the shoot, and she done these sort of amazing makeups. So when it comes to the location, but this is something to talk about, it's actually a quite funny story. So a social club. So may be a group of people or the place where they meet, generally formed around a common interest, occupation or activity. So how you sort of need to imagine a social club is, imagine a bar or a pub, but it's not just about drinks and food. It's about basically a group of people with a common interest meeting up. So this is how it used to look like back in the 80s. It's more for sort of the working class. So what we had and what we found is well, an actual modern social club, which is called Afro Social. And this is actually where sort of the name of the collection is where it came from. So basically, you know, the interesting fact about this actual social club, that it's very close to one of our old studios. So we used to actually hang out there, not like a lot, but a few times having a beer. And we did think about this venue because it's such a quirky, cool place, which was, you know, it could have worked quite well with the actual collection. And it turned out that they're actually renting this place out for shoots. So when it comes to the actual photography and the filming, we had a lady called Sophie McCordale, tricky name to pronounce. So Sophie is actually one of our colorists as well. So we used to work with her back in the days, and she was doing the color for us. But her sort of other job or profession is being a photographer, actually a documentary filmmaker. So she was doing the shoot for us. So what we really wanted to do with Sophie is, well, first of all, let's say get the shoots, what we were looking for to start with, but then let her to go free and roam around the social club and basically take picture of the girls as they were basically just hanging out there having fun. So this is a short video guide of the shoot. just so you can see that it was a pretty sort of relaxed atmosphere. You know, we done the prep, we started the shoot, but then from the afternoon we actually had a couple of beers as well, and we let sort of the whole atmosphere to loosen up a little bit. So when it comes to the actual collection, what we have is our photos. So we work with 3 models. 3 models only because what we try to do with our collections is rather than, you know, sort of trying to produce 5, 10 models and then having a few good ones, we actually wanted to keep only the good ones. So our first model, she's called Maisie, and she's actually a very sort of often used industry model in England. So she really sort of, you know how to basically be a hair model. That's what she does for a living, which is actually, you know, it made things really sort of interesting for us. The idea with the haircut was work with something very natural, but still creative, working with sort of strong disconnections. So what we have on this one is a disconnected area at the back and on the 2 sides where we work with lines. And then as we did go higher up on the head, basically between the sides, the back and the top, where the parietal bone is, we have an extra graduation going on to push the shape out. And then on the top we have a layer which peaks up in the middle to create sort of this very interesting flowing shape. But in the meantime, guys, we're gonna go back to this one to talk about the color in another picture. And then our second model is Bethany, who's actually one of our long-time models. So we did work a lot with Bethany. But the interesting story with her actual haircut was that, you know, going so short wasn't really the plan. So Bethany just had a baby, and she wasn't really at the hairdressers for a long time. So basically she had long hair when we done the casting. And then she basically turned up on the prep day with, well, cropped off hair. So that was, you know, a bit of a surprise on that side. So what we needed to do is basically completely change the plan and work with something very short and tight. So what we have here is basically a short layer going around the head with 2 slightly disconnected pieces on the sides. And then we have a simple square section on the top which was cut flat and then pushed into this shape, and also textured a little bit to make things slightly softer. So our third model, Rachel, she's a Scottish girl, really cool girl. So what we wanted to do with her is to create something a little bit, well, sort of more classic, but still very technical, but also heavily, you know, working with the styling. So what we have on her is a very sort of tight graduation going on around the back and the sides. Also on the side where the hair falls, we have a pretty short undercut. So then on the top we layer the shape flat and then basically style it into this wave and let it dry out for actually quite a long time. So that's actually natural dry. And basically she was the last one to go on set after we've been waiting, well, basically a whole day to, you know, to dry her hair out. And so these were really the main images what we had. And after this point, once we had this sort of, you know, one shots out sort of the way, we basically let the girls crawl around the social house, which was actually open, and we basically followed them and started to take pictures to create more of a story. So this is, for example, if you can imagine the beginning of their night out, getting ready for the makeup, also doing their dresses. This is again the actual toilet of the social house, which is it was a really cool place. And then this is just a close-up shot. She was actually, I don't think she was on set when we took this one. She was basically sitting there waiting. It was just a good sort of moment, but Sophie, you know, captured really amazingly. And then we started to play around more sort of shots around dresses. So, you know, small details like accessories, or, you know, a few sort of motion pictures. She was actually, you know, dancing at this point. Again, she wasn't basically posing. And then this is when you know, the girls are basically all together. So this is another shot from Maisie, just to show you the technique from the side. So again, this is a very sort of elongated shape. And the interesting thing was with the color is, as I mentioned, Maisie is a professional hair model, so that means she had a lot of sort of you know, stress put on her hair. So when we started to do the color, basically she had a bleach base, but that was colored over, like, you know, a few times. So we didn't want to actually strip the color out from her hair to make sure that she actually will have some hair left to cut. So we basically put the color all over her, and if you can see the small pieces coming out with different colors, that was basically how the color naturally stick into the hair. So with this picture, again, this is something which is a bit less sort of set. What we wanted to do again is just let the guys to hang out. You can see actually Maisie sitting in the background with Rachel. They're actually been just sitting there, basically having a chat and waiting. So guys, with this I hope you have a bit better idea on what was, you know, sort of the story with the social. What we are going to close this sort of short presentation with is a quick sort of you know, background video. It's not a promo video, it's more sort of a behind the scenes shot. Thank you guys, please enjoy, and I will be back with you in a second. Okay, so thank you guys. I hope you enjoyed this sort of short video. So what I'm going to do now is to start sort of the main attraction, or let's say the second part of the live, which is going to be an inspiration haircut for you. So not a full-on demonstration from start to finish. It's more like a partial thing to show you, well, a bit of inspiration and a bit of you know, sort of idea for creative techniques. So what we have here is a halfway prep haircut, working with these connections, and also quite sort of elongated shape. Okay, so what we have is a layer going on. So with these guys, again, as I mentioned, what we are having here is a creative technique working mainly on layers and on these connections. So what we wanted to do is sort of slim down or elongate the face from the profile, but then we're going to work something slightly heavier on the top, which will sweep over to the other side. So it's going to be more on the natural side rather than, you know, something too styled. So what we have at the back, basically work with a section running underneath the occipital area, just below here. So what we did, we had a section and then we pulled everything up to that point, basically giving the length which was used then at the back. So this first of all removed a lot of weight from the outline, but then also slimmed the shape down below, basically between the occipital bone and the hairline. And then running all around, what we have is basically a layer, which we can call a round layer following the head shape, but then still kept flat. So rather than working with a pivoting section, I'm working around the head. We kept the idea of sort of working around the head, but we work with a flat. sort of cutting line. And with slightly more elevation as we traveled higher on towards the top of the head. And this is just to slim these areas down slightly bit more. Then on the side what we have is two disconnected pieces. So these are really sort of slim or small, square shaped sections. So reason being why we worked with an extra smaller section, because we wanted to make sure that there is not sort of too much hair in these areas, which will help us to basically blend everything slightly bit more together. But then as well, we use the square section, we wanted to maintain a slightly bit more weight in these sections. So these two sort of sides will be dealt a little bit differently throughout the actual technique. And what we have left is basically the top area, which is what we are going to start off with. So the idea with the top is again to work with something with sweeps, but left actually quite natural. So we will see how much sort of blow drying we'll need for this area, and we will also see on the way how we do it, or as we're getting closer to finish it, on how the texture will come alive. But the plan is to work with something a little bit softer, quite a strong sweep from one side to the other. So this is actually going to be the mixture of two sort of different layers. So first of all, what we are going to do is to section out our first part, which we are going to cut. So we are going to create from the corner of our section. So on the top what we have going on is basically a square section, being higher on one side and then dropping a little bit more on the other side. So this difference will help us with sort of creating a heavier part on one side, sweeping easier towards the other. But then by this section on the other side being higher, we'll actually push out the shape more. So this will help us to basically create a little bit more interesting shape. So we're going to work with a triangle section, not a huge one. And this is going to be an extra area for the layers on the top, which will be connected. So working from this corner, we're going to take our first section. Have a look first how much sort of hair we have. We don't want to make it crazy big. What we want to create with this is basically an area which will help us to blend the back with the top, and then the actual sort of magic will happen at the front of this sort of section. So let me just so something like this should work just fine. So for now we're actually going to put the front out of the way. I won't clip it down, I will just slightly sort of place it down to the other side. And now what we are going to do with this area is basically follow the idea of the layers what we have running around, but pulling these sort of sections back and slowly connecting it in. So I will start off from this corner, find my cutting line, and I will pull the hair back to that point. So I'm not actually going to follow the hair, the head shape too much. So we'll start off with this, and this will be really the same idea as we're going to move around. So we will basically have these pieces sitting towards the front, blending everything more together. So this will create basically a more sort of flowing shape. So really the same idea, guys. What I'm doing is focusing on a couple of things. First of all, I'm focusing on my body position. So I know, even though I pull the hair backwards, I'm still sort of working with the idea of following at the bottom what I previously done. So that was basically a round shape. So with this, what I needed to do is to basically follow around the head shape, which means I need to maintain, a body position which will help me to do so. So what I need to imagine when I'm basically working at this part is basically a circle on the floor, and I work around that. So this is really just to help me with where I'm pulling the hair to. So when it comes to actual body positioning, or sort of the idea of where you need to stand when you're working on all these sort of different techniques, it all comes back to your over direction, to where you want to pull the hair to. So this piece, which I actually want to create a bit more of a blend on that side, this piece will be pulled further back. So rather than following the head shape now, I will actually pull this one back to my last section. So this is just to maintain a little bit of excess weight. So once this is done, what I will need to do, I actually want to have a look on the length to see if I will be able to use this as a guide for what I need to do on the top. Also in the meantime, I will just cut these leftover pieces off. Okay, so now what we are going to do with the rest of the technique is basically working backwards to my original section, or let's say to this triangle section. Now I will be pulling everything back towards that point. I don't want to leave sort of crazy amount of length towards the front, but we want to have enough length to actually make the hair to sweep. So by working backwards in this sort of diagonal direction, we are going to help the hair to move with a stronger motion. So first of all, I will need to do, take my next section, just to start with a small sort of enough section so I can start following the guide. So once I have this and I can actually see my guide, I pull everything back to basically the side of my section. First of all, what I want to do is to start with is actually estimate sort of how this will fall down. I can use my combos to help me imagine the length if I work with a square shape, which is more sort of, I will need a little bit more length, so I will work with more sort of a triangle idea. So short at the back, then longer towards the front. So in this case, what I will need to do is basically over direct everything to the same point. So this with the layers will be a relatively simple idea. So when I'm working on the top of the head, guys, there's a couple of things to sort of consider and be sort of careful with. And one of them is to be honest more sort of health kind of point of view. So many people, when doing the top or layering the top, tends to work with sort of very high elbows, which puts quite a lot of tension on your shoulders, which will, to be honest, on a long term will basically make you to be in pain. So I don't know if you can see, I work with very sort of low elbows, which is basically the idea. So to actually be able to do this, what I need to do is to work with a certain sort of scissor position. So if you can see how I hold my scissor at this stage, is simply I hold the blade parallel to the ceiling. So from the normal position, hold it parallel to the ceiling or to the floor, and I only lay the thumb on the top of my blade. So this is a scissor positioning which is actually often used when you're working on your outlines, but then also helps you to work with a very sort of natural elbow position when it comes to layering the top. So also the idea with where I stand is, well, the actual idea is sort of similar, but my positioning is very different at this point. So I will basically stand exactly behind what I'm cutting and stay in this position. Sorry guys, the hair is getting a little bit tangled, and just as it dries out, comb it out. And I stay in the exact same position. So what I'm looking for when I cut is an actual strong sort of guide to work off-road. And once I have that, I know that I pull the hair back into the right position. stage, slowly kind of start to see how sort of the movement and the texture will come alive. Take my next section and bring it back exactly to the same point. So it's going to get quite a bit of hair to sort of deal with slowly. So what I do, rather than working with the fine side of the comb, which was giving me sort of more control at this stage, start working with the wide side of the comb. This will help you to basically be able to comb the hair through. And I work with a chipping action when I cut. So basically this means I'm using the points of the blade and I pull the hair backward, the blade backwards when I cut. So this helps me to actually stabilize the hair in place. Okay, so this is really one more section left. Comb it all the way back. Again, I'm standing exactly in the same position. I focus on my hips, my feet and my shoulders being parallel to basically my section. And I work with the chipping action, pulling the blade back. And again, just a little bit of left overhead. And then just keep the last piece again back to exactly the same point. And now what I'm going to do is basically start running my fingers through the top. Just sort of very quickly. As I said, the idea would be to work with something which is basically more sort of natural dry, rather than something to blow dry or set into place. So I will run my finger through the front first, let the hair basically to dry out, and then just start to see how I can actually push the front part into shape. I work with the combing action with my fingers. I'm just basically trying to place the front down to see sort of how it wants to sit. Give me 1 second, guys. This is actually getting there, not too bad. We're being pretty heavy on the top, so we will need to do a bit of a sort of weight removal. First of all, let me remove these sort of little hairs. In the meantime, what I can do is push the hair in place, and I can use a small clip to start with, because I know I'm going to take a little bit more weight out first from the top, and then we start working down. But until I basically work on the top, I will just pop this clip in to basically start setting the front in this position, because this is kind of actually it starts to go to the right direction. So I want to, in the meantime, basically style the hair. So what we're going to need to do on the top is remove a little bit of weight. There's a few different sort of options to do it. First of all, we don't want to sort of shatter the cutting line we have too much. So what I'm going to work with to start with is basically deep point cutting, but working a little bit deeper. I don't want to create something too puffy, so I will work with a fluid motion. Or the way in my sections. Next section. And as well, I will actually pull this backwards for now. So I work with sort of the same dynamics, with the same idea as I was working when I was basically doing the base cut with the layers. Reason being why I'm not working with a pulling motion, because what that does is opening the actual hair shaft, which basically creates more sort of puffy effect, which is something what we actually want to avoid. What we want to have, let me just take the clip out so I can actually move this around a bit. What we want to have is something sitting a little bit slimmer. We'll possibly utilize a little bit of slicing as well at this point, but let me just sort of keep the structure to start within the thinning process. So again, I pull the hair back, put everything out from my comb, which I don't need. Pull the hair out, going in quite deep, not crazy deep, but a little bit deeper. And I'm basically being parallel to the hair shaft. I want to remove weight, I want to actually slim this area down, but I don't want to go sort of too short.
Let's just see if it starts to sit actually a little bit flatter. Which it does. Okay, I will start working towards the front a little bit more. I will start working with slightly less, actually more direction. Reason being why, because the front is also a little bit long, could be just a slightly shorter. We do like the movement in there. In the meantime, I just want to keep this sort of curl into the hair. I go in a bit less deep. And then slowly I will start traveling lower. Work with a slower motion as well. I want to, make sure that this is actually accurate. I'm trying not to keep this scissor on sort of a very heavy angle. The thing with the actual angle of the blade when you are working with deep point cutting, that depending on how sort of flat your angle is, the more sort of chunkier weight removal you're going to do. So the flatter the blade as well, the more you actually remove from the length. So that's something where I kind of want to do a little bit at this point, but not like crazy. So just change the wider side of the comb so I can actually have myself with the combing action. So once this is done, just basically what I need to do is to move the hair around. It's possibly going to be one time we are going to work more, with the slicing. We can remove quite a bit of weight from this, but we need to be sort of clever on how we're actually going to do this. So what I want is to work with, again, an action with my fingers, which will help me to flatten the back a little bit. And I will start pushing the front. I use basically a natural sort of curve or wave in the hair, and I actually watch where it's going to sit. So this is also, if you can imagine, I basically get ready for the time when I will start doing the actual styling. So what I do, I actually watch and look how the hair falls down on the points where the hair either don't want to sit to direction or sort of tends to fall down too much. I know it's a little bit too heavy. Okay, so what I need to do, I still want to create something a little bit flatter on the back. The front actually starts moving quite well, so we're going to work with more of a sort of sliding or slicing action. So this is, if you can imagine, going to be done by basically following how the hair moves by nature. So if you can see it from the camera, the hair basically starts going this way and then kicking off to the other side. So that's going to be the exact actual motion what I'm going to do. So I'm going to pick up a piece, basically pull it to the same direction. I hold the blade exactly the same way and I pull the hair back into the back of the scissors. And I work with very sort of small actions. I'm not just, actually sliding the blade. That would, to be honest, pull the hair quite a lot for us, which we don't necessarily want. What I want is to create basically a fluid sort of removal of weight. Again, I pull the hair. I see where the hair moves and I pull it to that direction, and that's the direction I'm going to follow with my slicing all the way to the other side. In the meantime, I actually need to see what's happening, because so this is something pretty visual. That's how you basically control the whole thing. And to work with something visual, surprisingly you need to see. So just a little bit more length can come up from here. I like it kicking out, but not maybe so much. I stand behind what I do. This is just so I can actually pull it, pull the hair towards this side easier. And I also step how I do it, and I basically keep pulling the hair to the same direction. Also, I don't know if you realize, I don't actually work with the comb. What I want is something which is sort of naturally removes weight. So I don't actually want to work with very sort of organized sections. And I'm just placing the hair where I want it to sit. This one here can go still a little bit shorter. So now this actually kicks up, which is what we want. So I will pull this up this point, this way. I'm trying to be careful. I want to have a bit of excess length here. I don't want to sort of go, crazy on it. But what I can do though is to go in from a slightly deeper to actually create, you know, a little bit sort of softer area that will basically kick out a little bit. So really the shorter pieces in the underneath will help me to basically keep that part in, you know, in position. So again, just move it a little bit around. I'm just playing with it really just to see how the hair actually moves. So at the front, still falling down a little bit more. So what we can do is actually play with still the slicing. We can start playing with the thinning scissors. So we like how the actual movement happens. But what we want is just to make this piece a bit less heavy physically. We are talking about actual weight. I don't want to remove, you know, the length. I will work with the same motion, only going in with the thinning scissors. So we are basically cutting shorter pieces into the weight, which will keep everything sitting more in place. Same idea on the other side. Let me change position, guys, and go up. I will just work a little bit more on this point. Again, same idea. I follow. I don't know if you realize, but basically, since we stop sort of the technical part of the haircut, what we are doing is pretty much working with the movement in the hair, and we're kind of mirroring what we do with our motion. So I work with the same exact motion with my thinning scissors, what I was doing with my sliding, but then as well, that is actually the same exact motion what we are created with, you know, the layers. So if you can imagine, this is also, it's the same sort of idea as, you know, cutting a shape, and then working with the blow dry, which is actually going to complement it, and then also removing weight on the same way. And you just make sure it dries out a little bit. I just use my fingers to push everything into the position where we want it to sit. So guys, we need to have a look from the other side to see how things are going. Okay, so this is getting not too bad. What we want is to let the hair to basically dry out slowly. So the weight is a bit better. The kink is actually quite sort of enhanced. But what we want is just to fix it there a little bit. I step back just to have a look. And let's let it sit here just for a bit until we are basically finishing off working on the sides and the back. And then also we're going to just pin the shape down a little bit. So basically until this piece starts to set. Yeah, we are going to start working with the refinements. So as I mentioned, guys, there's going to be two sort of very different things going on with the two sides. So on one side, which is going to be the left side first, what we want is basically something very natural. We are actually going to have a long piece here, quite a long piece. So we're not going to remove a lot, you know, from this. But what we want is basically getting rid of these wisps a little bit and create something slightly softer. So to create something softer, what we need to do is to work with elevation. So we are going to work with quite a bit of elevation, but we also want to create more of a sort of a triangular shape. So we are going to actually have a point falling down into a bit softer sort of position. So I come up, I stand actually quite far at the back, so I'm left-handed, just to be able to work, you know, with this sort of stronger short to long. It's easier if I also pull the hair backwards a little bit. And then just to make sure that this piece is actually soft enough, so again, I need to move around. Let's work with again a sliding action, just to make sure that this piece sort of still blends in with the rest, and it's not sort of too heavy. Again, what I do when I basically play around is not like randomly touching the hair. I lift it up and I'm trying to see how sort of the movement comes, you know, from the actual texture. So maybe just a little bit. Softer, I can go to the other side, but with the same motion. Again, I don't want to completely remove this piece. I'm being careful, working with very sort of slow motions. Just to make things blend a little bit. So on the other side, we're going to have something a little bit shorter. So it's going to basically create a pretty strong asymmetry. So what I want here as well is to work more sort of with a short, again with a shorter to longer idea from back towards the front, but something a bit shorter, more sort of aimed around the jaw. And at the same time, guys, so just a second. I'm going to take those off. So what we're going to do is to lift this a little bit. This is also how now we're actually planning to style it, but just lightly, not crazy, away from the head. And working with quite a sort of strong short to long. So I'm going back in, and again I'm going to cut a short to long cutting line. So then what we are going to do with this, so you can go a little bit shorter, so sort of keeping the same idea with the short to long. So this will be actually styled with spray a little bit more sort of outward. Not crazy, but just a little bit coming out with the spray. And then what we are going to do is basically refine the line when it's actually dried off. So just until, again, these bits are starting to set a little bit, we are going to start working at the back, which is going to be the only part where we're going to have something, let's say, a little bit stronger. So first of all, I just slow these down so they sit there. There's a few fluffs to get rid of, so it's just basically cleaning the shape. And then we are going to go cutting our lining. So what we want is an extra quite low outline, but something a little bit more sort of structured. So we're going to work with a curve coming from one side and basically moving all the way to the other. But we don't really want to take off the actual points too much. So just so I can actually do it. I push this hair out of the way. And sorry guys, I'm going to leave the head. So I'm going to do it quickly. This is just going to make my life easier, to be honest, to actually see what I'm going to do. I'm going to make it a bit more comfortable. Yeah, basically when it comes to working on your outlines, what you want to do is to have the head, well, basically eye level. So the only reason why I sort of try to avoid that is, well, basically not to keep the fluidity of the actual, live. Okay, so what I'm going to think about here is just basically how much of a point I want to have here. So I don't want to have like sort of a crazy amount, but I want to have a little bit. I will just take a bit of hair away, move it to the direction, push it into the position, and then work my curve from, let's say, that point down to the back. But I don't want to create sort of very strong, McDonald's sign. I still want to keep it relatively flat. Hair out of the way with my fingers. And I'm going, trying to go under the hair, start working towards the back. So I focus on basically my elbow. I'm going to refine the shape as I go. We're talking about a very sort of slim layer of hair. That makes it quite difficult to basically go underneath it. So yeah, this is going to be a little bit of a game with the points. Can be tricky. Also, if you can imagine, basically what we have is plastic. So it's not really something elastic. I can't really press it down to go underneath the hair. So I will need to work around it. Basically means I will need to work with more with the points. I don't want this to drop under the neck of the doll. So I go back and just trying to make it a little bit flatter. Actually, it's going to be easier to do it with the points as well. So a little bit at that point. Try to work it all the way to the middle. I will need to have quite a bit of adjustment on the shape, but that's where my pointing comes into the game. I can just turn her so I can actually see. Just soften this a little bit, we can do it afterward. So what I need to do now, to travel from the middle, I need to actually see where the middle of the head is. And then go and do the same to the other side. So it's a bit easier because I have a long, shorter length at this stage. So I don't really have to, be careful with the actual front. So what I need to do is I'm trying to go with something more symmetric. So I use my comb to get the shape of my line. I try to find the middle and I project it on the head. And I need to actually memorize this shape. So I turn the head. I need to see where is the middle. That's kind of the important thing, really. So now I go back again with the points. It's going to be a little bit easier. The other side. I'm working slowly with the points. I don't want to go in and sort of do this very quickly. It's actually much easier to work as well because of how the hair moves. And then I go back with the points, just adjust this little bit in the shape. Now work my way towards the front round. I will start slowly to drop. Pull it down. So now I know I need to basically just make things a little bit softer. So now I have a basic shape. It's a lot of work on it, but this is something what I will actually do with the points. Just a little bit more sort of cleaning to be done. Create less of a point at the back. And also, if you can see, I have the blade quite actually flat. Reason being why, because that's how I can actually go under the hair. Just slowly merging it into the shape. Again, the actual fact that I'm working with a plastic surface not makes life easier, but slowly we are getting there. Just want to get rid of all these little fluffs, and then once we have an actual shape, I can start slowly softening it. So I need to stand at the back just to see how basically the shape falls. So remove a few of these fluffs. So slowly actually starting basically the cleaning process. And now what I will need to do, slowly start sort of following how the hair sits and just take weight out quite carefully. I go deep, so I want to remove weight. I don't want to cut chunks out though, so I'm actually being careful with this. Once I'm happy with the actual amount of hair I have, just adjust the shape a little bit. I don't want to make it perfectly, I want it soft. I want a little bit of looseness to it. I can put the front out. Remove this little sort of too fluffy longer piece. Something, pretty natural we are going to go for. And I'm working with the points. Still follow the idea of my curve. But just softening the ends a little bit. Also I'm focusing on basically on how much I open the blade. So I'm trying to work with smaller motions. Again, if you open the blade too much and you cut like big chunks now, that kind of goes against the idea of what they're doing. And I still want to make sure I remove enough hair. Okay, so let me just have a look from a little bit further away so I can see what's happening. Still a little bit of work to be done. And then slowly what we're going to do is basically getting the mini clippers and start skimming the shape off. And also taking weight out from the actual back area. Before we actually go to going to do that, let's take weight out first. So basically what's going to happen when we're taking weight out, that will also create fluffs. And those might need to be removed. So if I go in with the skimming first and basically removing all this lot of fluffy bits, and then I clean it out, then I will actually need to possibly go back in with the clippers again. So what I want is really just to go back and follow what I've done with the cut, and again depointing the shape. So I'm trying to work with the same elevation and same idea as what I was doing on the top. We are working with an actual fluid motion. Just a little bit further down. And then also we're going to work with a little bit of slicing at the bottom, just to basically remove a little bit of weight from the line. So I'm taking a bit bigger sections, but trying not to take sort of huge sections. What I try to do is basically to follow what I've done with the base cut. So the exact same idea. And then go around. I'm not going to go too much to the front. I actually like the front to be a little bit heavier. Just to see how the hair actually starts moving. I don't want to sort of set it into stone. I want to have a structured shape, but I don't want to create something too solid. And go back. And just keep doing the same idea towards the other side, just quickly. Piece from the top, which I don't want to take off. What we have is a little bit softer sort of shape, but still we need to remove a little bit of weight from the bottom, so that will actually be done with slicing as well. So we can try to bend the head slightly to the front, in a position where you guys actually can see, and I can do it as well. And then really just start blending these two areas a little bit more together, not removing sort of too much more, weight, but taking a little bit off from the actual line as well. So same idea with the sliding. I stand on the other side and I follow the actual motion in the hair. Step. And I basically draw the same curvature with the scissor and what I actually have in the hair. So you can see. It's going to be a little bit better. More in the middle. I don't want to work too much more on the button. It's actually not too bad there. Just to create, something a little bit more fluid shape. Then the other side. This is a little bit trickier. So go all the way down, and then now we need to start working more sort of towards the front with my sort of motion. I can also pull the hair slightly if I want to, just to drive it into direction. This is a little bit sort of too heavy here. I need to be careful though. Start softening everything down. A little bit more from the middle. Shoes down. Okay. Just a little bit more from this point, and then we are basically ready to go with the bottom. And still a little bit heavy there. I want to get rid of. So it starts to sit a little bit better. I just removed the fluffs which I created, so it's still quite clean. So now what we can do is basically start sort of trying things into shape a little bit. Starting with the actual front, but first of all let me just get rid of these little fluffs. And then what we are going to do is to get the spray, basically style the front part and clean that one out. So what I need something a little bit stronger with the hairspray. So first of all what I need to do is I want this to stick out, but not like too much. And actually I want it to sit closer to the head, because we travel closer behind the ear. So what I need to do is to first of all fix it from below, from the other side. So I lift it away a little bit, but trying not to go completely crazy on it to start with. So pull the hair down and spray it from below. Keep it there. And it just basically set a little bit. And just go and flatten it from the other side a little bit as well. Just looking at this piece. And then now what I'm going to do is actually cut the shape, and then we're going to play a bit more with the styling. So what I want is a soft curve. So what I need to do is again imagine the shape I want. I want to have a soft curve, not something crazy, but maybe a little bit higher. So I would aim somewhere there. So again, I need to basically memorize this shape, imagine it, and now I'm going to work it to the shape I want. So I'm going to work with the same sort of chipping action, what I'm doing when I was working with sort of my base cut. We're going only using the points, and I basically pull the blade back when I cut. So once that's done, what I need to do is just to push the shape where I want it to be. So I'm looking on any sort of dips, heavier parts in the shape, and I'm going to point those up. What we still want is something a little bit still longer at the front. And now we get a little bit more spray. From the underneath, and we're gonna pull this piece out a little bit just to, sort of give it a bit more of an interesting sort of feel. Spraying from below, just leave it there, let it cool out. Okay, so now once that's done, I can go back and just touch up very slightly my line. First of all, I will start removing these sort of flaps just quickly. Just to get rid of the dips in the shape. Still trying to create something a little bit softer. Okay, I go to the other side. I look basically from the inside and just start, taking off. Usually what you get is sort of this excess weight from the inside, which basically hangs out from underneath your line, and that makes things a little bit, harder when you're actually finding the shape. So once I'm done with that, just final adjustments of this one. So now, once that's almost done, what I'm going to do is to take basically the clip out and start styling the top. So a bit of work to be done, but not crazy, so I can possibly do it. Just simply using my fingers and pushing things where I want them to sit. And if I need to use a little bit of spray, kind of make things to sit in position, then that's what I'm going to do. But first I want to basically make the head to sit how I want it to sit, and then only small adjustments will be done with the spray. Just 1 second. Now, just from the underneath, basically what we want is to slowly start sort of fixing the movement on the fringe, starting from the underneath. Pulling things up. And just finishing off the actual motion in the hair. Then I will get rid of the fluffs in a second. Okay, so once. Also just quickly to do it with this piece. Just a little bit spraying from the other side. I want to fix that piece which sort of falls into a little bit of a hole. And then just pull this a little bit higher. I don't want this to... Okay, so now with this side, with the other side, I want to do is to scrunch it up a little bit more so it's not just sort of sitting there. Pulling it out. Just trying to scrunch this piece up. And with the spray, just trying to get rid of sort of small interflux in the shape. So Go back to the side. Maybe I should just take off a little bit more from that side. So what I'm going to do now is basically go back and clean things up a little bit with the scissors. So anything which is sort of really, you know, sort of small fluffy bits, you just go around and clean her, but this is not to sort of, you know, change the texture too much. It's just a small piece which basically hanging out from the shape. So it's basically freehanding the shape in. Pretty much all around it. Could do it with the scissors as well. But with the clippers as well, but again it's actually easier to do this with the scissors. Really it's just a cleanup. I don't want to, you know, sort of change too much at this stage. Just it should fall. And then what I'm going to do now is basically have a look on the whole thing, see some you know, smaller bits in basically on the top. So this is really almost done, guys. Basically, what I mean, this is, you know, something which you can do for really the end of the days. Basically, when you start taking photos and stuff on the haircut, you want to get rid of these little sort of fluffy bits because they're kind of gonna poke out, being in the way. So that's going to make it, you know, much more sort of more difficult for you to take an actual great picture. So what I want to do is just to get rid of some of these. Just like that. And then we are actually almost finished. Okay, so with this, guys, we are getting to the end. Before I'm actually closing down the live, what I want to do is basically talk you through again once more on what was done today. So with these guys, we had a sort of a short live on basically presentation or you know, creative work based on our latest collection, which is again was called the Social. So to start off the day, we saw a little bit of a presentation on the actual collection to give you the feel and the mood. And then we did work on a creative technique as a sort of a partial demonstration. So guys, what was done with the actual technique? Now give me 1 second, I will get my comb so I can actually show you. Is we did work with these connections and sort of different type of layering techniques. So at the back we had a layer which was pulled all the way up to the occipital bone, and then basically that created this sort of flatter effect at the bottom, also created a softer outline. Then in the inside, in the middle, we did work with a layering technique, which was, we can call it a round layer, but we did work it flat. So basically we worked around the head, but rather than following the actual head shape, we did work with a flat cutting line all around, with slightly higher elevations which hover towards the top, just to avoid to create sort of a very strong angular shape. And then on the top we had another type of layer, actually two different layers going on. The corner of the top sort of a square section was connected into the back, and then the top, which created this sort of movement and sort of, you know, sweeping effect, was pulled all the way back to the side of our section. And basically the part of our square which was closer to the back. And then we worked with a lot of you know, texturizing techniques. We worked with styling, and then basically what we ended up with is the final look of today's creative demonstration. So with these guys, yeah, I hope you enjoyed.
thank you so much for joining us, and thank you so much again for Lemon Poppy Seed for actually inviting us to do, to do the live. So what we are going to do before actually finishing off the demonstration is to play the last of our promo videos. So with these guys, thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed the day, and I hope I hope to see you all very soon once we actually have the chance to travel. So with these guys, please stay safe, enjoy the last of our promo video, and I hope to see you all very soon.
What's up, everyone? It's me, Yoga.
Hi guys, I woke up this morning to the best news ever. I can't quite believe it still, that I've been selected as a UK finalist, top 5 for the Precision Cutting Championship.